Hey, and welcome to Fly Tying Monday. Sorry that we haven't done this for a few weeks. I've been traveling. It was in Texas, visiting our stores there and the Texas Fly Fishing and Brew Festival. And then I did a presentation in the Orvis, the new Orvis store in Wellesley outside of Boston. And now I'm back and not traveling for a while. So we have the rest of March. And on the third week in March, or the fourth week, I'll give you the date. The 27th, we have a tie-off with Tim Flagler, and it's Kevlar's Mini Gulp Sculpin. So kind of a jig streamer pattern. Next Monday, we're doing the Barbless Mini Flopper, which is kind of like a small modified chubby Chernobyl. It's a little foam-bodied, kind of a synthetic hair deal. When you want to fish a little foam fly, but you don't want to go to the extent of tying two sets of legs and two joints and all that stuff. So it's a more simplified foam-bodied rubber leg fly. Should be a good small grasshopper fly for early in the season. And I see we have people coming on left and right. Tyson from Rhode Island, Mac from Tennessee, Ed from Florida, Tommy from Noonan, Georgia, Warren from New Zealand, Roger and Cliff from Oregon, Chris from Southern Indiana, Christian from the Netherlands, Josh from Chicago, David from England. So we got people from all over, and of course, the amazing Roger Bird. So I see lots of people coming in. The numbers are going up, and so I'll talk for a couple minutes until I see the sign-ins start to slow down and plateau, and then we'll tie one of these flies, which is called the JuJu Baetis. And I won't tell you about it right now because I want to wait so that I don't have to repeat myself, because I see people still coming in. So I don't want to have to answer. For some reason, I don't like answering the same question over and over again. I don't know why. I do it in the podcast every week. But all right. So it is a couple minutes after 4. So we're going to start. The JuJu Baetis is a Charlie Craven pattern. Great Charlie Craven, who does wonderful books and videos, really good tying videos. I'm sure a lot of you have seen Charlie Craven's videos, and I don't tie the fly exactly like Charlie does. And when I'm tying it, I'll tell you there's just one change I make from the way I think Charlie ties it, at least the way I haven't actually watched his video on it, but I've seen the pattern as he describes it. So Phil is here, and Phil just put the dressing on the sidebar there in the comments. You can always see the pattern. I usually try to upload it a few days before. I only uploaded this morning, but if you go into the Orvis Facebook page, in the description or on YouTube, I always post the recipe. So anyway, why would you want to tie this silly little thing? It doesn't have a bead. It doesn't have any weight. Wait. Can you tie a nymph without a bead? Can you tie a nymph without a jig hook? Can you tie it without weight? And I think there's a couple reasons for wanting to have a fly like this. One is that Baetis nymphs, the little early blue-wing olives, they start early and they pretty much hatch throughout the season on and off. Some streams have them almost every day, but they're probably the first mayfly you're going to see. And they're skinny, and they don't have much taper. And I think that both weighting the fly or putting a bead on it kind of ruins the profile of a Baetis nymph. So I think that you want a few flies in your box that don't have big bulky beads or lead wraps underneath them. And you wouldn't be able to tie this fly so skinny if you didn't have if you had wraps underneath it. The other reason is that I think there's a good argument for fishing a dry dropper during blueing olive or Baetis hatch. And the nymphs are they're swimming nymphs, but they don't swim very fast. They don't swim like an Icenikia nymph, but they do a little bit of twitching and swimming. And I think the fish take a lot of them subsurface, based on you'll be fishing a hatch of these things, and you'll be fishing a dry fly, and the fish will either splash at your fly or not take it. And I think the fish are eating a lot of the nymphs just under the surface. And if you had a beadhead fly, or if you had a fly with some wire wraps on it, it would sink a small dry fly. And the way I like to fish this is to use a size 18 or 20 comparadun or sparkledun dry fly, and then I'll put a piece of 6X on the small dry fly and hang a small unweighted nymph like this JuJu Baetis to it. And so you can fish dry dropper right through the hatch. I think that once you've ascertain that the fish are really taking the adults, and you got a good fish rising, I think that's the time to take the dropper off, because you can be a lot more accurate with a single dry fly than you can with a dry dropper. But early on in the hatch and before the hatch, this fly makes a lot of sense, and it sinks pretty well because you're going to tie it on a fairly heavy hook, and it doesn't have a lot of bulk, so it does sink pretty well. So anyway, Phil is here today. Julia is still on maternity leave. Baby Irene is doing well. I think Phil mentioned that in the comments. And so let's start tying. And Phil, you're going to read the questions to me while I'm tying, right? Because I can't hear them. I can't see them. So anyway, let's start. Now, I think this fly is best on a short shank hook, and this is a hook that I really like for these smaller flies. It's a fulling mill Grub Boss black nickel hook, and there's a couple of reasons I like this hook. You could tie this on any, you could tie it on a Scud hook or a caddis pupa hook, but these fulling mill hooks they're barbless, they're very sharp, they have that nice turned in point that really holds fish well, and they have a nice big eye on them so that they're easy to thread, and they're a real heavy wire hook. So you can get a little bit of a sink on this hook without having to add a bead or a lead. So let's go to the vise. That's sort of like what this thing is going to look like when we're done. And I'll put the hook in there, and you can get a little bit closer look at this fulling mill Boss Grub hook. But you can see it's a nice heavy wire hook with a nice big eye on it. All right, so I'm going to use 2 colors of thread with this fly. That's the way it's normally tied. I'm going to start out with white, and then I'm going to switch to black. If you don't have both colors of thread, you can use white for the whole fly, and then when you get up toward the thorax area, you could just take a black marker to your thread. That's a kind of a pain. I can never figure out how much thread to make black, and I have to keep going and re-blackening. So I'm gonna use 2 threads. Can always use an extra bobbin, so you want to have your black thread loaded on your second bobbin. So I'm starting my white thread here, right about the middle of the hook, maybe a little bit forward of it. And then for tails, we're going to use Hungarian partridge. You can use, I think, any speckled feather for this. Speckled hen feather. You could use some coq de leon. You could use wood duck. But the pattern calls for Hungarian partridge. And this is a good place to use those feathers that are way up here over the tail that that are too big to tie soft tackles with. So you got a nice big feather up here. You're not gonna tie any soft tackles with this, except unless they're giant. So I got a pretty good size feather. You can also take feathers off the wing. Here's the wing of the partridge. You could use some of these covert feathers on the wing, but they're feathers that you wouldn't normally use for soft tackles, so it allows you to use up some of the stuff that you wouldn't normally use. And then just want to strip the waist, the weak fibers and the fuzz off there. And now you got enough tailing material to tie probably a dozen flies out of this one feather. So I'm going to take, I don't know, 5 or 6 fibers, and line them up, and then either pluck them or cut them from the stem. And then I'm going to come over to the fly, and I like the tails to be fairly short on this. So I'm going to go like right about here. And I'm going to give my thread a little counterclockwise spin so it jumps back over there, and kind of pull the fibers toward me and up so that they stay on top, because the thread's going to tend to roll them to the far side, and go down the bend a little bit. So I've wound a little bit down the bend there. And then cut off the waist fibers here. And now for the body. So Charlie Craven ties his pattern with 1 olive and 1 brown ultra hair, which is a neat way of doing it. Very, very durable, and cheap, easy to wind. I like to use these magic quills for my body. And you want, this fly is kind of a brownish olive body. So what I do is I take my magic quills, package of magic quills, and I take an olive and a brown marker, and I just mark it up. I just take the marker and scribble on there, and then I take the olive one and scribble. And you can see it's kind of mixed. It gives it a nice mottled effect, and it's a brownish olive. And you could change the body color on this to, whatever you wanted to imitate different nymphs. So the magic quills, you have to strip them off the backing. And often you get 2 at once, but I didn't there. I just got 1. And this stuff is nice because it has a black stripe on it, so you get the simulation of quill. And usually the tips of these, for some reason, are kind of weak, so I just pull it and break off that little piece there until it's strong, and then it's super strong and stretchy. And then I'm gonna come over to my fly, give my thread another little counterclockwise spin, tie that quill in there right on top, wind forward, and Baetis nymphs don't have much of a taper at all. They're pretty skinny, so I might maybe take one pass of thread back over there just to thicken that up a little bit. But they really don't have much of a taper at all. And then I'm going to wind this quill, and you can kind of pull on this and stretch it a little bit when you're winding. It's very durable stuff. And you can see that nice little black stripe going in there. So it gives you a nice segmented body. Just be careful you don't catch this on the point of the hook, and then tie it off about halfway up. And cut that off, leave a little bit of a stub so that you can bind it under. And now I'm going to do a quick whip finish, like 3 turns, and switch threads. You probably just do a couple of half hitches here too, because you're going to cover this up. So I've got another bobbin load. Oh, and this is 12/0 thread, by the way. This is a size 16 hook. I'm surprised nobody asked me that yet. Oh, and I see this terrible little hair that I couldn't even see that until I looked at the camera. Got to get rid of that. So now I'm going to start my black thread.
Hey, Tom.
Kind of the middle. Yeah.
Quick question from Bill.
Uh-huh.
What's the difference? What's the difference with the thread if you do a counterclockwise spin versus a clockwise spin?
Oh, if you do a counterclockwise spin as you're looking down, the thread will jump back. And generally you want the thread to jump back. It will also flatten the thread a little bit. And if you spin it in a clockwise direction, the thread will jump forward. So here I'll show you. I'm gonna give this thread a counterclockwise spin. And now you can see when I start to take a turn, it jumps back. And if I go the other way, see if I can get it to unwind enough. Now the thread will jump forward. So it helps you grab materials by giving it that counterclockwise spin. And I'm going to go back on the body a little bit here because I want this to be about half abdomen and half thorax. Most mayflies have that configuration. Any other questions, Phil?
Not yet.
Wow. So again, I'm using a size 16 hook, and I'm really tying a size 18 fly because this is a short shank hook. So I got a big bite. I got the bite of a 16 hook. It's good and strong, but the fly is going to be about a size 18. So you can get a good strong hook with a good gap on it by using these short shank wide gap hooks. All right. So the wig case is simply a piece of pearlescent mylar. I'm using this Mirage tinsel. Could use a couple pieces of flashabou if you wanted to, or one piece of wider flashabou. I'm just going to cut a little piece of that off. So it's got kind of that flashy, pearly look to it. And I'll take that over to my fly. And I'm going to lay this on top of the hook.
You ready for another quick question?
Yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
Could turkey buyouts be substituted for the body?
Yep. Sure. Absolutely. Then it wouldn't be a JuJu Baetis. But you could argue that maybe this isn't a JuJu Baetis because I'm not using 2 colors of ultra hair. So yeah, could use a buyout. I don't like buyouts. I hate buyouts. I don't like tying with them. But yes, you could. Okay, so I'm going to place this piece of tinsel, and you want it to be kind of flat on top of the hook. So fiddle with it a little bit until it's flat on top of the hook. And then wind about halfway back on that thorax. And then the wing case and the legs, it's actually more the legs than the wing case, are made from some sort of sparkly synthetic hair that's very fine. This happens to be frosty fish fiber, but you could use DNA fiber or probably use EP fiber. The other thing you could consider here is leaving the legs off entirely because they do retard the sink rate a little bit. And I'm just going to grab about somewhere between 6 and 8 of these fibers and cut them off and then wet them until you got a nice little piece of stuff there. And then cut maybe an inch. And now you've got enough left over for, another 4 flies or so. So just a fairly short piece of those fibers. And then I'm going to give my thread a counterclockwise spin so that it jumps back over this. And I'm going to wind back, trying to keep this on top and go all the way back to where the tinsel starts. So about halfway. All right, I'm going to go a little bit more. 1 more turn. 2 more turns. There. Everybody with me?
Got a couple of questions.
Okay, go.
What size magic quill are you using?
I am using small.
Okay. And John says he has a... Oh, cool. Oh, they're coming in hard and fast now, Tom.
Okay.
John says he has a white fox head pelt from Wyoming. Would long fox hair work there?
I don't know. Could try it. It doesn't have the same sheen and sparkle as this hair does, but yeah, you could try it.
And then Wes wants to know if you could substitute organza there.
Yeah, organza would be a good. Yes, a few fibers of organza would be excellent. In fact, I'm not so sure that this stuff isn't unwoven organza because it looks like it. Yeah, that would be a really good substitute. Absolutely. But you could see that this stuff kind of has a little crinkle and a sparkle to it. And I think that adds something to the fly. Any other questions?
Not at the moment.
Okay. All right. So now we want to build up that thorax a little bit if it isn't built up already, because the fly does have a dark thorax and it's not as wide as most mayfly nymphs, but it is a little bit wider than the abdomen. So you do want to build that up a little bit, particularly with this 12-0 thread. It doesn't build up very well. And then bring your thread up to just behind the eye, like so. And fold your fibers over the eye. Tie them in, like so. And then push them back and take another turn or two over them to push them back, like so. Now, you want to separate them, try to get an equal amount on each side, or thereabouts. I got 4 on each side. And you might want to take a turn just to lock those in place. Kind of fiddle with them to get them where you want them. Pull them off to the side. And then you can split them by bringing your tinsel forward and taking 1 or 2 turns of the tinsel, and then fold that tinsel back and take another couple turns, because otherwise it tends to pull out. So this is what you're left with at this point. Okay. And you're going to cut this off. And you're going to pull your legs off to the side and trim them pretty short. That was a little too short, but I'm sure it'll be fine. Those are a little short, but that's okay. These things, actually, no, that's good. That's pretty good. These things don't have very long, distinct legs, these Baetis nymphs. And then take a couple more turns and whip finish. With 4 turns, 4 or 5, depending on whether you're in the northern or southern hemisphere, because just kidding. 4 or 5 turns will do it. I'm going to put epoxy on here, so I'm not terribly worried about my whip finish holding. All right. So you do need to put some epoxy or head. You can use head cement on this, but I'm going to use epoxy. And you want thin epoxy, because this is a little tiny fly, and you got to be really super careful of glopping too much epoxy on this. So I'm going to take a thin epoxy. The thin epoxy of your choice, UV cure epoxy. And I'd advise you not to try to goop this onto the fly, but put a little bit on a Postit note. And you can leave that there. You know, what I would do, if you're tying a bunch of these, you're probably going to tie 3 or 4 at least. Put enough for 3 or 4 flies on there. You don't need much. And then just don't get your UV light close to it, and you keep coming back to the well for that epoxy, and it won't harden. So you can keep it there and use it, and tie all your flies first, and then do your epoxy all at once. So I'm going to grab a little bit of this on my dubbing needle. And carefully, bracing your hands, start with the body. Go up over the wing case, a little bit on the leg.
You're blocking the camera with your thumb, Tom.
Well, too bad. Excuse me. I'll do the bottom, and hopefully I won't block it this time. I had to brace my hand on there. All right, so that's the underside of the fly. And I've got to get just a little bit more epoxy. I'm not blocking it now, right? And just carefully
Looks good.
coat that. Now, there is a tendency to put on a small fly like this, there's a tendency to put epoxy into the eye of the hook. I got a little bit of it. I'm just going to fix this right here. There, that looks better. Okay. There's a tendency to block the eye. So this is what I do to make sure that because once you harden that epoxy, it's really tough to get it out of the eye. So what I do is I take a needle and I stick it in the eye. A dubbing needle won't work. They're too heavy. You need to get yourself some small needles if you want to do this. And then I'll hit it with the epoxy, or hit it with the light. And I do that side, and then I do this side. Do it underneath. Make sure you get it at all angles. And then you take your needle out. And now you know you've got a nice clear eye. And when you get to the river, you won't be cursing yourself because you put epoxy into the eye of your fly and you can't thread it. You can do that with head cement too, but especially with this UV cure epoxy, that's what you want to do. Just helps. It helps. So that is it. That is the JuJu Baetis.
All right, you ready for some more questions?
I am more than ready for questions.
Well,
Fire
first
away.
of all, Roger Bird screwed up his abdomen and wonders if you could do another abdomen just so he can copy you.
No, Roger. Roger, you can watch it on the replay.
Michael wants to know, what is the wing material again?
It's it could be any flashy oh, the wing material. Well, the wing case is this Mirage tinsel, but you can use any pearlescent tinsel or pearlescent flashaboo. And then the legs underneath are frosty fish fiber, but organza will work. Any kind of glassy, kinky, flashy stuff. You could probably even use micro crystal flash if you wanted to. Midge crystal flash. Or you could leave the legs off. You know, I might tie some without legs because I think it'll sink better.
Wes wants to know if you stole your Post-it note trick from Tim Flagler.
You know, I've been using Post-it notes for a long time, but I might have originally stolen it from Tim Flagler. I've stolen a lot of things from Tim. I've learned. We shouldn't say stolen. I've learned a lot of things from Tim Flagler over the years. Absolutely, yeah.
And then John wants to know what your opinion is: Vivus versus HTC.
UTC.
Maybe UTC. It says HTC.
Yeah.
The H is next to the U, so it's a problem.
For a small fly like this, I prefer Vivus to UTC. I like UTC on bigger flies, but I'm using Orvis 12.0, which I really like. But Vivus is another good small fine diameter, strong thread. It's a really good thread. Anything else? Crystal Flash works well. Do you use Magic Flash in size small? I don't even know what Magic Flash is, Andy, but you probably could. The next tie-off is, I said it at the beginning, but I know a lot of people weren't here. Let me tell you.
27th?
The March 27th at 3 p.m. and it's going to be Kevlar's Mini Gulp Sculpin, which is in the Orvis lineup, in the FMF lineup. It's a small kind of a jig sculpin type fly, and it will be a tie off with Tim Flagler. And next week we're doing the barbless mini flopper, which is a dry fly, small hopper kind of terrestrial type fly. Yes, Julia has had the baby. And Andy, Magic Quill, I'm using size small, yes. Julia's had the baby. The baby's doing fine. Everybody's happy. Okay, other questions? We have time. We have time for questions. Don't forget the giant fly sale. If you don't want to tie them all for the month of March, you can get 20% off all your flies on the Orvis website or in Orvis retail stores. It's a good way to stock up on those patterns that you don't want to tie yourself.
So Julia gave me permission to share this for those who want to see baby Irene.
Oh.
She's very happy mom.
Yep. Are all fly tying UV resins epoxy resins? I think so, Doug. I think they're all some sort of epoxy. Travis says my desk looks incredibly tidy. Yeah, I got this new tool organizer from Hairline. It's a big long foam tool organizer, and I can put all my many tools on here. And I decided, okay, I'm going to clean up my desk. So I cleaned up my desk, and it does look very tidy. I do that about 3 times a year because that's all I can stand. It's a great feeling, though. It's like cleaning your desk. You know, it's a great feeling of cleaning your work desk. A great feeling finally cleaning up your fly tying desk. It's really, I highly recommend it. Off subject, would this heavy wire be good for unweighted midges like zebra? Yeah, Mac, it's excellent hook for the zebra midge. Yeah, absolutely. If you use copper wire to tie this, it would look like a Sawyer nymph with different materials, and maybe it would sink a little faster. Yep, maybe. Wouldn't look the same. It would be flashier and brighter. But yeah, it would be a whole different pattern, I think. Can you show the magic quill you used? I have never used that material before. Sure. Magic quill is a synthetic material that comes on a sheet like this. Actually, let me pull out one that hasn't been colored out of my fly tying stuff here. If I can find one. Bear with me here. Here they are. So magic quills come like this, and they're let's open this one up. This is a size medium, so it's bigger. But they come on a card, and they have a stripe, and they're tapered. So it's just like a natural quill, and they come white like this, and you can color them. You could either color the underbody before you wind over the top, or you can color the quills themselves. I find it easier to cover a whole bunch of quills prior to tying a bunch of flies, and sometimes it's a little tricky to pull that off. But you can see it's got a taper to it. Maybe a little tough to see there. It's got a black stripe, and it's got a taper to it. So what I did was I just took this pack of magic quills and I colored them with a permanent marker. Excuse me. So those are what magic quills are. They're synthetic. They're a plastic material, and they're sticky on one side, but you don't need to worry about that because you're just going to wind them and then put epoxy or head cement over the top of them. But that's what a magic quill looks like. It gives you a look just like a natural peacock quill, but much more durable and easier to handle and work with. Okay, I don't see any, and Orvis sells those magic quills. We have lots and lots and lots of them.
Did you answer the zebra midge question?
I did, yeah. I said I thought it'd be a great hook for a zebra midge. Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
All right, I think
I tie all of my small midge imitations and small mayfly nymphs on this Boss Grub hook. I love it. Really great hook. Okay, everyone. Well, if there are, we'll give you one last chance to ask questions because we ended early today. If there are no more questions, I will see you next week. We're going to tie a dry fly, and it's a fairly easy one. So that should be fun. All right. I want to thank you all for tuning in today. If you're new to the Monday fly tying, welcome. We try to do this every Monday if we can, if I'm not traveling, and we have a lot of fun. And these are all archived on the Orvis Facebook page and on YouTube, so you can go back and watch them again if you ever need to. But thank you all. And how small do these hooks come? Philip, I've got them as small as a 20. They may come down to a 22. You can look that up on the Fulling Mill website. A size 20 in this is like a 22 or even a 24 shank length because they're short shank. So they come I think as small as you need them. All right, everyone. Thank you, and we'll see you next Monday at 3 o'clock, not 4 o'clock. We're going to go back to our 3 o'clock time next Monday. So thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you soon.